Hey there, this is Ananya, and today is the second day of studying OOP in Python. Now, last lecture we got to know why are we using OOP, then how do you go about it, the concepts of object and classes, and also a few examples. Now, today we'll be concentrating on two basic points. Firstly, the init method, and secondly, the self word. Okay, so let's take a simple example of a class train, which will have the name of the train, the destination, and the source. So what I shall say is, we all know this process, we have done this previously. So class train, and for now, just for starters, I'm just going to say pass. I don't want it to do anything currently. And since it's a class, we obviously need an object. So let me say T1 is equal to, so we're basically instantiating it, right? And now what I want you all to see is, what if I print the object? So it's not a capital. Okay. So print T1. Okay. And there you go. If you see, it gives you that it is an object of the class train. Now, for the time being, let main be. We will be seeing what is name is equal to main later on. So you all can see it's a train object at a certain memory address. Now what I want to do is, I want to assign, or rather say, give names and the sources and the destination names. So what I'm going to do is, I shall say T1 dot name is equal to, let's just keep it T1 itself. Next, I shall do T1 dot source. I'll be just taking random city names. Let me say Mumbai, and T1 dot, I'm just keeping it short, is equal to, let's say, Kolkata. And similarly, I will be printing a few more, let's say one or two more. I'll just be back. So as you can see, I have made three train objects and they have certain names, T1, T2, T3, and they travel one from Mumbai to Kolkata. Then the other one is Toronto to Vancouver, and another one is Delhi to Chennai. Random cities, all right? And now what I'm doing is, I'm simply printing them. Now I have printed T1, T2, and T3. Let's do T3 also. Now just for a shortcut, what you can do is select the variable or the number, whatever that you want to change. Press Control and select the others too. That reduces a lot of work. Okay, I just made them T3 at once. Now let's run it. So what we get is, we get T1, Mumbai to Kolkata, T2, and T3. Okay. So if you can see, I am repeatedly typing all the names and cities. Then what is the use of a class if we have to do so much of work by ourselves? Now that is where the init method comes into play. Now what you can visualize init as, something that you can initialize your variables with. For example, let's see how we can go about it. So it's an init method, right? So we have to have def. Now you will have to have two underscores, init and underscore again. See, it changes color, then you'll understand that you're working correctly. Now each method takes the self keyword first. Now comes the self keyword. Now keyword won't be the correct phrase because self is not a keyword. Let's imagine it as something that we are assigning the object to. Now remember when we were learning about closures and first class functions, we were taking a variable and assigning a function to it. Imagine it in a very similar manner. We are taking an object and we are assigning it to it. So last time I had told you that we'll understand what happens when an object, or rather say a variable, is assigned in a class. So what happens is, whenever you call this class and assign it to the T1 variable, it becomes the object of it. and it goes straight up to the init method immediately whenever you instantiate it. And at the same time, your variables are, let's say, declared or defined. So that is the work of init and self. A quick recap: init is an initializer. If you have some previous knowledge on Java, you can, or C++ also, you can imagine the init method as a constructor which initializes your class variables, and self is basically an object which you can assign it to. It's a self instance. Now, moving forward, what I'm going to do is, now since self is an object in itself, let us say self dot name is equal to name. Now I shall explain what exactly is going on. So you see, you can basically call, or rather say initialize, the name, source and destination variables using self dot. Just the way we were doing object dot name, object dot source, you can do the same thing up here. And since we have to call, or rather say pass, the variables into the method, init method, we also have to say name, source and destination. All right, and that's it. Now all of this, I'm simply going to remove it. Okay, no need of doing so much of manual work. Now inside train, I shall say my initial names. Okay, that is T1 Mumbai and Kolkata. I guess it was Kolkata. Okay, so as you can see, I have just put in the names without any declaration for each of them, and I have printed them just like the last example, and we're going to run it now. And there you go. You have the exact same output, but with less amount of work using init and self. Pretty simple, right? Now, in case you were a little doubtful about init and self, I hope it's clear now. Init is for initializing, or rather say it's a constructor, and self is basically taking over the task of an object, such as T1 or T2 and T3. Simple. Now, I hope that's clear. And last time we had also seen how we can include functions inside the class. Only important thing you need to remember is the self word has to be there. Now just a note, it's not necessary always self, okay? Don't be fixed on the point that yes, I have to use self all the time, but it's just age-old tradition, and to keep things less confusing, we just use self. For example, if I just turn self into selfie, it actually doesn't matter, you know. There you go, you're still gonna get apple as your output. So, doesn't make any difference. See, you get apple again. Alright, now I hope that's clear. We are done with classes, objects, then class methods, init and self. I'll meet you all next time with something easy and quick. Bye-bye, I'll see you all soon.